and I'm here at the arts exposition with Pado O Brien.
Pado O Brien, yeah.
Pado O Brien, and he's originally from Kerry, and I was admiring this paint, his art, the other night, and about Kerry, and so. Pado, tell us about the picture. I love them all, and they all tell a story. What was your inspiration behind this?
Inspiration for that one, I didn't, as I thought going along, I didn't have any plans. It was a photograph I've seen with my own daughter who visited a pond in Kilkenny Castle Park.
Oh, yes.
And she just described to me how the swans were swimming this way and that way, and I started drawing it from my head when I started the art on the Monday, I think that the Monday we were doing it. I just decided to draw for what I thought she must have seen.
Right.
So I had no picture whatsoever in my mind other than just what I thought she might have seen.
Wow.
They're supposed to be swans, but they turned out more like big ducks.
Oh, I think they look beautiful, swans.
And I just made it up as I got along and put it in the sky there in the early morning with the sun shining, again with the two shaded areas. So that's all that is really. But from my mind, that's what I think she saw that morning. That's about
Lovely. It. And tell us about this one, Somewhere in Kerry.
That could be it. That just came out of my head again, just such a drawing, painting, putting the two trees, and somebody said, that looks good, we'll put that in. And that's it. That's just simple.
The Kingdom.
The Kingdom, somewhere in Kerry, possibly. Green and gold. All my paintings will have kind of a green and gold kind of a flip.
And this one here, I'm going to bring the camera.
Skellig, is that the one you?
Yeah, the Skellig. I'm going to bring the camera, and I'm going to.
The Skellig. Well, I worked down there for many years.
Did you?
In a place called Cahersiveen, or outside Cahersiveen, in a place called Village Observatory. So I was working for the Meteorological Service.
Oh.
And I used to always admire the Skelligs. Someday, of course, I will travel out to them.
Really?
So you can imagine, I left Kerry maybe about 50 years ago, more than 60 years ago, and I had never visited the Skellig. So at one stage, when I had a family in Dublin, I said, we are going to Kerry in holidays and we're going to visit the Skelligs. And I must say, the visit to Skellig Michael, which is the main Skellig Island, was the most inspiring thing I've ever done. And I've been to Fatima and Medjugorje and Lewis, and they did absolutely nothing for me. But when I was on Skellig Michael, Skellig Michael, to give it its correct pronunciation, I was so inspired that I started believing that there has to be a God, and I was as near to him as I ever was on Skellig Michael. So these are just paintings, a painting I did from memory as to what I think they look like. I know there are plenty of paintings done of them, but these are just my mind. What came into my mind as to what they must have looked like from that angle. That's about all it is.
And you talk about that, you got so much inspiration and saying there must be a God. I've looked at so many sort of books and papers where they say there's that the Michael Skellig, that there is a direct line to a lot of monasteries, and they call it the sword of St. Michael.
I would imagine so, yeah. I mean, to me, I was never nearer to whatever heaven is than when I was on the Skellig Michael. And that's a good many years ago, maybe about 30 years ago.
And what
with my children and my family, and they were all fascinated by it too, of course. Yeah. And I just exploring the island and then walking. I think it's 618 different Cayman steps going right up to where the monastic settlement is, which is fascinating. And
was it the feeling?
A great job has been done there by the Office of Public Works.
Was it the feeling that you got inside you when you were there?
Exactly. It was just so spiritual. So, I mean, you're looking down over the sides and you see instant death, 300 feet down, and rocks and things, I suppose, puffins, gannets, all these unique birds, which kind of you kind of feel that they have been there for billions of years. And this thing was formed billions of years ago, and this monastic settlement 800 or 900 years, over 1,000 years ago. And it's just awe-inspiring. And that's was the inspiration for this, for these paintings.
And you grew up in Kerry. Did you ever hear any stories or any legends passed down through the local, through your family or from the local people in Kerry?
Actually, as you reminded me now of some stories I used to have when I was growing up. When I was a child, I don't think you were allowed to get married within the Catholic Church during Lent.
That's right.
But there was old stories there that, like the old people, you could go to Skellig because that was outside the kingdom of the parish or whatever it, the diocese of Kerry. And that if you wanted to get married during Lent, that you'd have to go to Skellig.
Right.
So this was a story we grew up with, and whether this was true or not, I don't know.
Lovely. And did your parents ever talk about Skellig or any family relatives or neighbours?
Not really, except that the monastic settlement. I should like there'd be a lot of monastic settlements in West Kerry and Southwest Kerry and those places. Unique, or I suppose isolated places where the monks felt that they were nearer to God to pray, etc. So I never felt like being a monk myself, but some people might suit them, I don't know, but they definitely inspired me when I visited Skellig.
And in the ending of the Star Wars, Mark Hamill was there in Skellig.
Well, I would have been, a little bit pessimistic about Star Wars being allowed in there in the first place, but because the damage they might do when they were kind of modernizing something that was so ancient. But having said that, and having visited Kerry many times within the last few years, the amount of tourists that it brought and anything that brings money to Kerry must be a good thing. So I have changed my mind and said, well, maybe it was a good thing to have allowed them in there.
And Pato, as you were saying, you've been to Rome, you've been to Medjugorje, you've been to Lourdes and Fatima, but you found God in Skellig. It reminds me of the Alchemist.
Yes.
That he went far away and then he came back to where he was a shepherd, and that's where he found the true treasure. And you found that.
Exactly. You're reminding me there now of the old Shanukkel. It's Tossie in the clinic. If I doing away hills of green. And it just reminds me of the old story that we learned at school and go, Finoga Orga, the golden windows, a little boy living on a hillside, looking across at another hill, miles away from him. And someday he said he'll have to get to that other hill because the windows of the little house that he was looking at across the valley had golden windows. One day when he was old enough, he was allowed to walk over there, and it took all day to get there. And when he got to the little house on the other hill, he looked back and could see that the windows in his own house were golden, but the windows in the new house that he had found were not golden at all. And it had been the sun shining on that house in the early morning, and by the time he had got across the valley to the house that he admired so much, found that the sun had changed and they were now shining in his house. So the motto of the story is, your own house is the house, the golden windows.
And God is within us.
God is within us, and it's definitely within the Skellig Michael.
Yes, especially and you just sort of made me reflect on the line and the alignment of Skellig with other monasteries. So there must be something in it. And maybe are we looking too much out externally to find God and find
God
ourselves?
is within us.
And God is within us. That brings me lovely to our next painting, Reflections.
Reflections. Unfortunately, I have no idea what that is supposed to be, except it started with an egg and a sheaf of wheat. And the sheaf of wheat got bigger and bigger and bigger as my paintbrushes were heading on. And then I discovered that it became some kind of a tree of some description, of some kind of a growth that just was in my mind.
The Tree of Life.
and that Tree of Life. And then I felt that, well, I have to reflect it in the water because that's what happens. And it just came to life as I finished it, and somebody mentioned that, oh, that looks fantastic. Leave it, leave it, leave it. And it's very hard to leave a painting because you always feel that you have to touch it up. All of those paintings are totally unfinished. But if I started touching them up, you would find that you'd make it worse.
And it's all, everything we're talking about here today with you is about reflection. And the painting, reflection
on life, reflection on your health, reflection on everything, if you like, reflection on life. And I'm only after a couple of weeks back in West Kerry myself and the Gaeltacht, and it is so awe-inspiring to hear the old language being spoken so freely and so beautifully. Brendan Bioglia gave us a fantastic talk in Pado O Brien, I guess we should go. I must say, if anybody really thinks the Irish language should be forgotten about, they're really mistaken, because it's just as valuable as the Book of Kells or the Rock of Cashel or anywhere else. It's fantastic to hear it spoken in its old, natural way. Here, Sikiri, here,
and do you think it's the revival now of the Irish language and the Irish culture?
Well, I think people have grown up mentally, if you like, or spiritually, to realise that they were nearly losing something that was very, very, very old and very, very evolving, obviously. But it's fantastic to hear it being still spoken of, alive and well, and in context. And it can be in Weintracht too. It can be, it can cater for the modern as well as the old. There's no question about it.
It's a culture, it's
evolving, and it's there, and irrespective of the political differences of people, I think the Irish language should be something that binds us all together.
And on that note, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us.
Thank you, Roisin.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Are we finished?